Coming up next, I'm gonna pick my 5 favorite rose fragrances. Haven't done this one in a while, and the list is always changing, as we know. So 5 great ones that I recommend. Some of these, and most of these, I think are a little bit more under the radar than your typical rose fragrances. Find out what they are coming up next. Welcome back, everybody, to JoelTheNose. Again, here from Osme Perfumery in the Wynwood section of Miami. Today's video, dun, 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 is rose fragrances. Guys, don't be afraid. These are great unisex rose fragrances. Everyone here is a fragrance that I have worn and that I wear and that I recommend for both men or women. In fact, these probably are gonna lend trend a little bit more, for the most part, right down the line, unisex, maybe even a little bit more masculine. But you know, rose is one of those fragrance notes that's one of the oldest in all perfumery. It's one of the most common. It's one of the most, you know, I guess, reproduced. So there's a lot of good ones out there. There's a lot of bad ones. But I'm gonna tackle this and try to give you 5 that I really like and recommend you try. The first is one that's new on my, I gotta say, on my list, because I just smelled this for the first time maybe 3 months ago. And this is from the French house Goutal. This is Rose Pompon. This is almost like a, I would describe it almost like a champagne. Think of it almost as like a rosé. Maybe not champagne, but almost, this reminds me of an effervescent, like rosé wine. It's very fresh, it's very light, it's very clean, it's very fresh, it's very easy to wear, it's very versatile. So if you like a rose fragrance, it's a little bit lighter. It is, you know, the rose is gonna be a little bit more, not a sweeter rose, but a little bit more of a kind of, you know, darker, pungent rose. But this is a great fragrance, great house. That's number 5. And just so you can kind of see, I didn't hold it up there very long. Rose Pompon. Okay, next, we're gonna go to number 4. And this has been on one of my lists before, I think one I did probably a year ago. And that is, so it's still on there, always love this one. I want you to see it. This is Atomic Rose from Initio. Atomic Rose, you can see it there, from Initio. Oh man, always in my top rose. It remains in my top 5 rose fragrances, but the notes on this: bergamot, pink pepper, Bulgarian rose. So a lot of roses, you'll see some of them are from the Damask rose. Bulgarian, obviously, there's, you know, different regions throughout Europe that a lot of these come from. Then you have also Turkish rose in this one, and jasmine and vanilla. So to me, this one is a little bit more of a sexy, a little bit more of a, I would say more of a date fragrance rose. The other, Rose Pompon, is more of almost like a party rose, you know, like a champagne, a rosé, like a kind of going out clubbing rose. This is more of your kind of date night fragrance rose. That jasmine gives it that sexy animalic quality a little bit, and then combined with that Madagascar vanilla, which is the finest vanilla in the world. You know, at the top, it's a little bit, got a little bit of that citrus kick from the bergamot. So this is a very well-rounded, well-blended rose, and you got the 2 kinds of rose, the Turkish and the Bulgarian, 2 of the finest in the world. You also have roses from Grasse, France. I mean, you know, so there's a lot of areas you can go to get these, the rose. But, and depending on that, it's gonna give that rose a completely different quality in the fragrance. That's number 4. Number 3 is from the house of BDK. I've talked about this one in the past also, and that is Tabac Rose. Obviously, this one, it is what it, when you think of it, Tabac Rose, it's got a tobacco rose, which gives this one to me is, of the 3 on here, I would say this is probably the most masculine leaning, but still very wearable for women. It's got a spiciness to it from that tobacco. it's a little bit warmer. So the other fragrances are a little bit, you know, they're either lighter, more effervescent, or a little bit richer. This one is warmer, it's a little darker, it's a little spicier, and it's got that great tobacco element. So if you're looking for something, I think this is, of the three, if you're afraid of rose fragrances, or you're, you know, just, when I say afraid, meaning that you're afraid they're too feminine for you if you're a guy, Tabac Rose of these 5 is probably the best one to start with if you want to get your nose into the rose fragrance world. So try Tabac Rose, that's my number 3. Number 2, this is a new entry. It's from one of the houses that I think does rose better than anyone. I was going to have another one on here, which was Taif Elixir from Ormonde Jayne. So this is Ormonde Jayne. This is part of this collection that came out in the last year. These orange, kind of like, you know, blended orange bottles that start light and they get darker. There's a whole series of them. They're wonderful. There's Xander. There's, well, what do we got? Oh, Xian, which is another one of my favorites. But this is a beautiful, effervescent, also kind of rose. So this one is a little bit more like the rose Pompon as far as qualities go. This is a very good, oh yeah, just effervescent. This is a light, bubbly, effervescent rose. And I picked this one because Taif Elixir, I was debating between Taif and Damask. This is one of their newer ones. I like the direction they went with this. It's a little bit of a lighter direction. I think it's a little bit more of a versatile direction. Taif Elixir is more darker. It's got a wonderful oud quality, but it's a little bit of a darker rose. It's a little bit of a more challenging one. I think it's a more of a niche rose. This is, I think, going to be, again, a good beginner rose fragrance for almost anyone out there who wants to get into rose. Bottom line is it's named Damask after the damask rose. So you know what this is about, you know what it's centered on, and you know from Ormonde Jayne, who does rose so extremely well. Her fragrances are so blended. They use even a special alcohol in their fragrances that's different from almost everybody else, that just gives it a unique quality. Like when you smell Ormonde Jayne, any of her fragrances, you know that you're smelling Ormonde Jayne. It's got that DNA, like all the best houses have, where you can smell one and you can smell one that's totally different, and you know it's still that same house, Ormonde Jayne. That's my number 2 choice. Number 1, and this is one that I loved from the first time I smelled it. I smelled it for the first time about a year ago. Oud Rose Intense from Fragrance du Bois. Love the bottle, love the sprayer, love the house. I love oud, I love rose. This, you know, I mentioned Taif Elixir, which is kind of an oud rose from Ormonde Jayne. This is, to me, look at that sprayer. I mean, you see that? Oh. Like, I'm gonna spray it on my arm right here because I love this one so much. Don't be afraid of the oud. This is not an, oh boy, I'm just keep smelling this, I'm sorry. This is not a stinky, pungent oud. This is a very mild, beginner to intermediate oud for those, again, who are scared when they hear the word oud, combined with the rose, which is a popular combination. Oud and rose have been blended a lot over the years. A lot of times it's done because the rose helps kind of neutralize the oud and make it not so strong. So I think it's a very common use by perfumers to introduce people to oud through this rose note. But of all the great fragrances that are out there that have done it, to me, Fragrance du Bois Oud Rose Intense is the best oud rose combination, and that's why it takes my number 1 spot on the list as far as rose fragrances that I recommend you try and that are my personal favorites. So there you go. Top 5 rose fragrances that I recommend. Get your nose on them, let me know what some of your favorites are, and as far as the rose category goes, what you like to wear, both men and women. And it's one of those, you know, just, again, classic elements in perfumery that really needs to be in everybody's collection. Thanks for watching. Thanks for your support. I'll be back soon with another video. Peace, love, and perfumes.